there, folks. It's Jimmy Stewart here, hoping this is finding you all doing well. Today's video, I'm going to talk about 3 amps, all 3 under $300, and they're a mishmash of practice and perhaps small studio or even recording amps. Or perhaps an amp that you can actually take out and gig with you. And we'll talk about the difference in all 3 of these in the up-close video of each one. But today we're going to talk about the Spark 40 practice amp from the folks at Positive Grid, the Stage Right 15-watt valve amp from the folks at Monoprice, and the 50-watt Boss Katana single 12. Now, that is the Mark I version, not the Mark II. Now, the Mark II has replaced the Mark I, although I think you might still be able to find those, but it's basically the same amp with a few upgrades that they did for the Mark II, and we'll get into that as well. So, the Positive Grid. Jesus. Oh my God. So, the Positive Grid Spark 40, the Monoprice Stage Right 15 valve amp, the Boss Katana 50. Let's have a look at them.
Now the Spark 40 from Positive Grid is a new entry this year into the modeling amp genre. So this is a small stereo output modeling amp with a bass reflex type of cabinet housing 2 4-inch custom designed speakers. What makes the Spark unique is the application that's either Android and or iOS, along with some of the features they put into this with the jam along feature and the learning guitar type feature where you can play backtracks and have it tell you what the chords are and be able to jam along with different tracks that are available on YouTube and things like that. It is a wired connectivity 1/4 guitar input, just one input with a 1/8 aux out for the headphone. It does have Bluetooth out, so you can use it as a Bluetooth type of speaker as well. Just weighs about 11.5 pounds and about the size of a bread box with a nice little leather handle that comes up with it. Some really interesting things you can do with the Spark. So check out the Spark 40 from Positive Grid using the Positive Grid bias engine for their tones. This is the Monoprice Stage Right 15 valve amp. Now this has been around for a number of years. It is a 15-watt valve amp, no modeling on this at all. They have redesigned it recently. This is a redesigned model with the controls out front instead of on the top where they used to be. Again, this is a Celestion equipped 12-inch speaker. It's a 7080 Celestion speaker. This has got 1 input, and it does have an attenuator on the front of that to change from 1 watt to the full 15 watts. So for practice purposes, that makes it really nice if you're in a smaller room or in a small studio, or you're a bedroom player and you don't want to disturb your neighbors or your significant other. What's nice is it does have the FX loop on the back, in and out. You do have a foot switch output on the back, as well as just a simple FS1 that shuts your reverb on and off. And there's your Celestion 7080 speaker. Nice speaker. It's a nice amp, about 25.5 pounds, so not real heavy for a valve amp that you can be able to take to your rehearsals and practice and all that kind of thing. Very nice sounding amp. Very well done from the folks there at Monoprice. Now there's been a couple of versions of this that have been coming out. I think even Thomann makes one now. This is the Boss Katana 50, and as I mentioned, this is the Mark I version of it. The Mark II version looks identical, and they've only done a couple of changes to it to upgrade the amp itself. You do have a tone cloud with Katana, all the different Boss effects that you can get. This says over 50, I think it's up to 60 now. But it is a single input amplifier with a 12-inch speaker. Much like the Spark 40, you have 4 banks that you can save your tones into if you'd like to, and then you have your dial on there for the different amp types that are actually built in, and then you can download those tones both from their tone cloud to your amplifier and update them that way. So you've got a little bit more versatility here because you do have a foot switch input that you can change, at least grab those tones and change them around, which you currently cannot do on the Spark 40, which is nice. The speaker is a 12-inch, and it's a Boss Katana type of speaker, and you do have a phones out and a aux in on the back of the cabinet on this, and it is also USB, so you can use it as a recording interface for your DAW as you can with the Spark 40. It is one in, and on the Spark 40 it is one in and two out, because the Spark is actually stereo. The Boss Katana is not. Again, a nice amp, a very loud amp. You could actually probably use this for rehearsals and or live gigging if you needed to.
Okay, so single P90 guitar here, and we're going to just go off the clean channel of the Positive Grid Spark. The clean channel, I've got gain just barely on. Pretty much all my other controls are set at mid. I have backed the bass off a little bit on this because it tends to have a little bit of bassy sound to it, so I'll back that off a little bit, and I've increased the treble a little. Everything else is pretty much in the mid section. The output is mid and the master is mid. And again, not using the app. This is just the tones that are built into the Positive Grid the way it is. Volume and tone are completely up on this guitar. Single P90. This is the Firebird Firefly FFDCS. There is a tap control on here, so you can control that delay right from there. So that's clean. This is the glassy channel. Crunch. The other thing you have to remember when you go to the presets on this amp, it's going to go to all the different effects and all the different amps and the different settings that it has in that preset. So once you hit it, to get rid of the delay and get rid of the reverb, and you got to reset it back to 0. High gain. Metals. That's on glassy. This is on crunch. High gain. and metal. And back to clean. So, the Spark 40 without any app, just what's going through the current presets that are in the amp as it stands. Now we're going to move over to the Monoprice Stage Right 15 valve amp. Now this has got no effects built in outside of some reverb. That is at full 15 watts. That is at the minimum setting, which is 1 watt. So you're going to see. Alright, so I'm going to bring the gain down a little bit, bring the volume up. Again, this is all at center. Add just a little bit of reverb. And of course, if you wanted to get a little more grunt going there. Again, that's on 1 watt, so I'm hoping I'm not blowing the microphones out on the cameras. Again, I've got that microphone set up about 5.5, 6 foot away from each one of these amps, so it's just recording off the mic of the camera, and I'm using a Rode microphone on a Hero 5 camera for this, so as you can see. Alright, so let's move on. So here we are with the Boss Katana. And that's on the clean channel with the settings exactly as I had them on these other amps, but this is not as loud. So I'm going to go this is the 25 watt setting. This is on the crunch channel. This is on the lead channel. This is on the brown channel. So really, depending on what you're doing and what your needs are, any one of these 3 amps would be a fine choice. Again, they're all under $300, and they all have their own pros and cons, of course, just like any amp would. So, you know, if you're into the apps and you want tons, thousands and thousands of tones, and you want to be able to use that with your iPhone or your Android phone or all those kind of good stuff, check out the review I did. I've done a couple of them actually on the Spark 40 amp. Check it out up here on the link, and you'll see some of the differences between this amp and others. It's got a few quirks to work out, and I'm sure with some software updates and a few things that the people at Positive Grid will be coming out with, it's a fine practice amp, and it might be even more. Now, the Celestion equipped Monoprice 15-watt valve amp here, this is more amp than what you'd probably need for practice. However, it is a nice practice amp because you can cut that wattage down to that 1 watt setting or bring it up to a 15 watt. But even at 1 watt, it's very, very loud. It's a great amp for the studio. It's a great amp, I think, if you wanted to take it out and rehearse with the band or even gig with it. I think it would do all those perfectly well, depending on what size place you're playing. But even then, I think 15 watts, and this can get very loud. It's a good sounding amp. It's well worth the money. All of them are, actually. But this is more if you wanted to have a practice amp and a giggable amp, and I think this one is the one. Again, it's a 15-watt valve amp. You gotta love a valve amp. And if you wanted to, obviously, you could put some pedals in front of it and have the same type of situation you'd have with a modeling amp. The Boss is similar to the Spark, although the Boss came out first. It's got some great features to it. It sounds very good, and it is loud. It can get really, really loud, especially when you bring it up to that 50 watt. And I haven't even had it on 50 watt setting. It's just too loud for here. Most of the time I keep it at 1 watt. But it's got the 25 watt setting as well, which I demonstrated on here. A lot of good features, lots of tones that you can get. Again, the Boss has a tone cloud as well that you can download all the different Boss pedal effects for that particular amp. It's got a 12-inch speaker. I think you could actually gig with that fairly well as well. So practice amp, giggable amp. The 50-watt version would not work with that Boss switching pedal that they came out with. That was only for the 100-watt amp. But this amp will work. It's a little convoluted, but once you get used to it, it'll work. But anyway, the FS5 or the the dual foot switch, the FS6, will work on the Boss 50-watt Katana. A foot switch for switching out the reverb on this. Again, it's got a small FS1 switch on the back of that for the reverb. If you pick yourself up a Fender, this is the 1 button on off FS1 foot switch. Works like a champ with that, okay? Or I think any FS1 type switch would work, but I picked up the Fender. They're very cheap online. They run around $9 to $10. Pick yourself up one of these. It works fine for switching your reverb on and off here. And again, remember, if you're going to use pedals, this does have the FX loop in the back of the amplifier. People have asked me about the tuner built into the Positive Grid. Yes, it does have a tuner. Let me explain it though. It's kind of convoluted. It doesn't really give you great tuning options, but basically you tap this on and you'll hold down the tap switch on here once it turns on. That brings it into tuner mode, and then these 4 LEDs will give you, oh, let me demonstrate it. So as you can see here, the 4 LEDs will light up depending on where your guitar is. Now that's in tune. That's a little flat. That's flat. That's in there. That's flat. And that's flat. So let me set this down here. That way at least the camera can see it. All right, and to take it out of tuner, you simply hit the button again. And that's it. People have asked about the built-in tuner in the Boss, and yes, it actually has a built-in tuner. Nobody, well, it's kind of like a buried. It's like, remember back in the days with the Xbox cheat codes that you could pop in? You have to hit X at 9 times and B 3 times and then C twice, and that's how you get to the tuner on the Boss. So it might as well not even have a tuner. So anyway, those are the 3 amps. Kind of trying to make this one quick. Just depending on what you're doing would be depending on which amp that would be suited best for your particular need. All 3 are very well worth the money. Again, I'll show you the pictures. The Positive Grid is available from the folks at Positive Grid. They're shipping a lot quicker now than they were when I first got mine. It won't take you, or shouldn't take you 6 months to get it. I've seen them coming in with about a month and a half to 2 months now on the orders for the Positive Grid. So you can order that directly from Positive Grid, and as you can see, the price is still up there, I think at $224. The Monoprice, you can order directly from Monoprice up here. The amp runs around $249. Right now they're out of stock the last I checked, and they're having some shipping delays. They're having shipping issues as well. Everything coming out of Asia is backed up a bit as we speak right now. So, but the last I checked on this, it was $249 and free shipping from Monoprice. The Boss Katana, you can still check out. They sell them on different music sites. Musician's Friend, Sweetwater, even Amazon carries them. They're the Mark II version. There has been some changes done, but it's pretty much essentially the same amp with some of the upgrades that they've made into it. I think there's a dual, so every one of your current amps that you dial in has 2 versions of that now, and a couple of other things that they've done on the Mark II that make it even a better value. But they're running now around $229, $230. So, I mean, any one of these amps at that price point, when you pay your tax and what have you, depending on where you live, is going to come under $300. So every one of them is a very good value. Every one of them is worth having. So again, depending on your needs and what you think you really like to have, do you want a modeling type amp with all your different effects built in? Do you prefer a nice valve amp that you can throw some effects on and still carry the pedals that you like, the pedals that you think sound great, and run that way? So it just depends on what you guys feel like doing. It just depends on what style. It just depends on the situation you're personally in. It just depends on what you think you might want to do. It just depends how much money you want to spend. Now, it doesn't really depend. It just makes sense that if you're looking at a modeling amp, they're really three of the most popular amps that have been out for the last year, 2 years or so, with the Spark just being introduced this year. So take your pick, one of the three, or you could buy whatever amp you want. I just wanted to show you the three that I thought were fairly popular, obviously very popular. The Boss Katana, when it first came out, was a huge hit. The Monoprice has been around for a few years, the redesign for a couple of years, and it's been a huge hit and a fan favorite on the internet. The Spark 40, of course, has been all the rage. It's just now arriving to a lot of people. Some of us have had it for a couple of months. It's a great little amp. Needs a couple of things, but it's working out very, very well, and it sounds good for the money. I think it's a great practice amp. So folks, that'll do it for today. I just wanted to give you a quick look at 3 different amps that might be up your alley. That's something that you might like. 3 of the better and most popular amps that are out there. Something that might fit the bill for you and your current needs if you're in the market for one of these amps. Alright, so that's going to do it for today. This is Jimmy Stewart saying so long, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't. Keep yourselves healthy. Keep yourselves safe. Until next time, bye-bye for now.